Hey, Trent.
Hey, Jess.
Hey, everyone out there, and welcome back to our Parent Circle's YouTube page. For this episode, we'd like to talk about maybe some of the questions adults have, and then hear how some of the OCSE educators will answer those questions. So, we're going to talk about affirming youth experiences, some maybe concerns or problems that people might have, addressing sexuality and having these conversations. And of course, we're going to provide some really great resources for you. I hope you really enjoy this episode.
When is a good age to begin talking about sexuality with my child?
Information about sexuality can be given as early as age 2 and demonstrated throughout everyday activities as teachable moments, such as the music we listen to, what we may see on TV, and the conversations we have with other adults. It's important to note that sexuality is not just about the first 3 letters. It's an umbrella term that covers topics such as bodily autonomy, anatomy, consent, decision-making, puberty, hygiene, relationships, and so much more. Remember, learning about sexuality is a lifelong process, and as they're caring and trusted adults, it's important to provide medically accurate, developmentally appropriate, and non-judgmental information as best as we can. There's many great, incredible resources on the internet to assist with what topics to talk about with your young person and when.
Does talking to my child about sexuality make them more interested in having sex?
That's a really great question, and one we get all the time from parents and other trusted adults. That's actually a myth. The reality is that as the primary sexuality educator of their young people, caring adults talking to their young people about sexuality in developmentally appropriate ways actually acts as a protective factor against sexual risk behaviors. We know that less than 50% of teenagers are actually having sex, despite what the stereotypes about teenagers say otherwise. However, we do know that teenagers are exploring their sexualities in adolescence. So opening the door to shame-free and productive conversations about sexuality between caring adults and young people is crucial. We know from experience and that the studies show that they actually want to have these conversations with a trusted adult. And just remember, as a caring adult, it's okay to feel awkward and uncomfortable and unsure what to say to your young person. Just being there as a resource and a guide for them is more than enough to ensure that your young person feels supported and encourages them to take care of their sexual health above all else.
Does my child want me to be the one to start the conversation about sexuality?
Many parents worry if and when to initiate the conversations about sexuality with their children. It can be a daunting task, and you may think back to what your parents told you, or you may rely on school educators to handle it. But put simply, you are always having the conversation about sexuality. Silence is a form of communication. And if you do not discuss sexuality with your child, they may take that as a signal that you are unavailable for this topic. Be honest with yourself and be honest with your child that you want to have these conversations more often and that you want to be seen as someone they trust as they continue to grow and develop. Don't feel pressured to give the talk and throw away any lectures you may have been drumming up. This is an ongoing conversation. Ask what your child is thinking, and as their parent, normalize the complex feelings that they are experiencing. Remain judgment-free and guide them to medically accurate and developmentally appropriate resources. Feel confident that you are raising an emotionally intelligent being that is capable of making informed decisions for their own body. Continue to build on the conversations you have with them as they grow, and be mindful of other areas in the household that can oppose or contribute to sex positivity.
What can I do to make talking about sexuality less awkward?
Talking about sexuality can be uncomfortable for lots of people, and that's okay. There are lots of different ways that we can make these conversations feel less awkward. Our goal when we're talking about sexuality is to have open dialogues that destigmatize and normalize sexuality. Because it is normal and it's a natural thing to talk about. Stigma around sexuality, especially stigma of talking to young people about sexuality, can make these conversations feel awkward. Normalizing the subject and honoring respect, compassion, and open-mindedness during these conversations are key here. We can do this by lifting up medically accurate information and also exploring our own values and stigma surrounding sexuality before we have these conversations. It's important to address our own stigma about sex because young people deserve to have all of the information they need about sexuality delivered to them in a way that leaves them feeling informed and empowered, not shameful or awkward for having these very common and normal questions.
How can I make sure I'm being the best possible support for my child?
It can be intimidating as a caring adult in a child's life when it comes to having conversations about sex and sexuality, and it's normal to wonder whether the support you're providing is enough. Know that the best support is unconditional. This means having open communication with your child and also being non-defensive during conversations about sex and sexuality. This can be particularly difficult during conversations that may test your own personal values. At times like this, it's okay to reach out for support. There are so many other caring adults in your community that are also doing their best to provide their child with the most effective support about sex and sexuality. Fall back on medically accurate information and also your local health center. And know that by being present and listening, and also starting the conversation about sex and sexuality with your child, you're already providing support, and that is so invaluable.
What should I think about when responding to questions young people may have?
I'm really glad that you're asking this question because a lot of caring adults struggle with this exact same thing. First, you know your young person best, so it's important to keep that in mind when it comes to answering their questions. Next, there is a strategy that we use called RISE. RISE is a really helpful roadmap that you can use when answering any question. First, you want to reaffirm that you heard the question and that it's good that they asked. Next, you want to give them the information if you have it. If you don't know, it's okay to say that too. In fact, it's better to say that than to give faulty information. Then you should screen to make sure that they understood the answer you gave and that you answered the question that they asked. At the end, encourage them to come back and ask more questions. Let them know that you are there as a resource and you can give them good info instead of relying on potentially faulty internet info. During parent circles, we'll practice this skill a lot.
What are some recommended resources available to me for guidance and good information?
That's such a great question. There are plenty of resources out there that can assist adults in discussing sexuality in an affirming and medically accurate manner. There's books, there's videos, there's articles, there's websites with activities. There's so much out there. But one thing we want to suggest is attending one of our Parent Circles cohorts. These classes are personalized to developmental stages, and they help provide necessary tools for adults to be allies for young people. This is designed for youth-serving professionals, parents, caregivers, or even teenagers. There are 4 90-minute sessions accessible through Zoom, and they cover topics such as brain development, STIs, contraception, gender, and so much more. There are incentives for participants, and if you create a cohort, you can even receive $100. We look forward to seeing you at our next Parent Circle meeting.
We hope you enjoyed the video and picked up on a few things that can be helpful as an ally to young people. Knowing some of this information could help you raise awareness about the importance of comprehensive and developmentally appropriate conversations happening between caring adults and the young people in their lives. Maybe you even picked up on a question answering tip that can help you as an adult answer some of those tough questions. In the meantime, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and reach out if you or someone in your network is interested in forming Parent Circles classes virtually. Thanks, and circle up next time.